Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Well. What do we have here? Texas Tech is at it again, my friends. Texas Tech has riled up the SEC yet again, and it's for basically the same reason. And I'm telling you right now, this is, I think, the most important thing happening in the Big 12 right now, and arguably the most important storyline heading into the college football season is what is happening in Lubbock, Texas right now. Now, what happened today will not directly affect the 2025 team, but it continues this trend that Texas Tech has been on and underscores the bigger picture storyline here of what Tech is trying to do by basically raging against the SEC and Big Ten powerhouse machine with the way that the Red Raiders are recruiting right now. So I want to discuss that ad nauseum, the overall significance of it, how I think this could actually affect some real change in college football, what Texas Tech is doing. As you can tell in the title of the video, potentially, could this lead to some rule changes? Will Texas Tech upset the apple cart enough for that? We'll talk about it, okay? And then I want to get to the SEC reaction. There was some great SEC reaction on Twitter and message boards. And thank you to message board geniuses for bringing a lot of that to us. Beyond that, though, overshadowed by what Texas Tech is doing today is a Yormark masterclass in TV rights negotiations, which I think is very much worthy of being talked about. Now, it's not going to be the most popular thing in the short term. What is happening with the basketball TV rights for now and the news that we got about that this week. But at least in the short term, like right now, I think once you actually start watching these basketball games that are going to be on Peacock, it may actually change some minds. And I'll explain all of that. But big picture, this is such good work by Brett Yormark to get some games on Peacock. Okay. And look, ESPN has dictated who the most important player in the Big 12 is. And I know it's going to be a polarizing one for sure. The guy that I picked, I think I did this list maybe like in May, in the spring sometime. Most important player in the Big 12. My pick wasn't even on the list. He didn't make the list. So we'll discuss my grievance there. Okay. Anyway, that's what I've got coming up on the show tonight. Plus, we got a little sponsor tonight. Okay, we'll say hello to my friends at SeatGeek later on in the show. So please do like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everybody who does that. Totally free. Keep filling up the comment section. If you want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show tonight, you can click the $sign below the chat box. And appreciate everybody who does that and chooses to support in that way. Also, again, guarantees your entry onto the show tonight. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you want to drop me a line there, if you're not catching this live, that's an easy way to get your question or comment on the next show. I promise I will kick off the next show with it if you do that. So lots of ways to get in touch. Make sure you're subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Just dropped a really good anonymous player survey update on the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter this afternoon. The best one of the bunch and the final one of the bunch is coming into your inbox next week. So as I continue to tease that out, look, as I was going back in it, I actually found the content was better than I thought for this latest one, which is how much money are these guys actually getting paid? I asked the players, like, how much are players actually getting paid in NIL? And they gave me some honest answers, and I forgot how good those were. So I ran it in full by itself instead of pairing it with what's the craziest thing that a coach has done to try to get you to transfer. So that's what you have to look forward to if you subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com or click the link in the description of this video. I like this one. I like this from DJ E-Tex. Texas Tech finally living up to their name and rating everybody. That is exactly what's happening. Rating everybody out of SEC country, like coming in and taking all the 5-star recruits. That's what Texas Tech is doing. Okay. So I've already let the cat out of the bag, but one Big 12 school has the SEC totally in shambles again. And could this actually force the SEC to change rules? That's a question I'm going to ask today, and I'm going to legitimately ask it eventually here. But let's start with what happened, okay? We're heading into a kind of ambiguous era in NIL and college sports and revenue sharing where we don't know exactly how it's going to go with revenue sharing. We don't know exactly. I shouldn't say revenue sharing. We know how that will go. There will be a cap. For the first year, it will be around $20.5 million. What we don't know is how the excess NIL is going to be piled on top of that. And a lot of the speculation today is, well, look at how Texas Tech continues to land recruit after recruit. Clearly, they don't think, I saw Stuart Mandel say this, they don't think that fair market value is going to actually be something that sticks. And this will just be the wild, wild West era continuing. I think that still is up in the air, and I think you can argue Texas Tech even still thinks that that is up in the air. But here's what we do know for sure. Regardless of whether it's a new savvy strategy and just how to spend the same amount of money that virtually everybody will have, or it's an expectation that they will continue to be able to throw as much money as they want at anybody. Either way, Texas Tech just landed the number one player in the class of 2027. It is an edge, and his name is LaDamian Guyton. Okay? Not only that, just within the last few days, Tech got an official prediction from Steve Wiltfong at Rivals to land five-star offensive tackle Cooper Hackett. So a couple of things that I want you to realize here. What you're hearing about is, yes, Tech is landing a bunch of five-star prospects. That has happened because Felix Ojo was another one that came within when did Felix? That was like July. I think it was 4th of July. So within the last like month plus, they've done this 3 times in essence. And what you're noticing is that, yeah, they're getting five-star players, but they're also getting five-star players in the trenches. And if you go back to Tech's portal class, which was ranked number 1 in the country, Tech's portal class is basically built on a bunch of edge rushers. Like they're trying to get better in the trenches, which I think is such a good strategy in terms of how you are going to spend your money. The details here on Guyton. What's it going to take to get this guy? What's the going rate to get the number 1 prospect in the class of 2027, who, by the way, heavily pursued by Georgia. He is from the state of Georgia. This is somebody South Carolina, Tennessee. Basically, the heavy hitters in the SEC wanted him very badly. It's going to be, according to On3, $900,000 next year for Guyton. And then the contract will escalate steadily, and it would be worth $3.5 million for his 4-year career. I would tell you that just by looking at the numbers and how they just sort of stair-stepped up by a couple $100,000 every year, it looks like Tech is somewhat conservatively planning here for this to still be a rev share era, as opposed to throwing a completely crazy deal out there if it was just a total free-for-all where the expectation is, hey, you're going to have like a $40 million roster every single year. If it is more the former, where fair market value actually will be real, and Texas Tech is trying to plan for that, there are some risks with this strategy that I will point out real quick. Going after high school players like this is a bit more risky than the portal, but there is probably higher upside here. Generally in the portal, you're going to get more of a known commodity, and there wouldn't be as much upside there as the high school guy that you don't really know what they're going to turn into. But there's also a pretty big floor there. And if you really do have a $20.5 million salary cap, in essence, that's the way to think about it. If you miss on a guy that you're paying basically $1 million as an offensive tackle and he's not doing anything, that's a huge amount of resources being taken up when you have a limited amount of resources to pay your entire roster. So there's a risk here. But Texas Tech clearly does have a strategy beyond just, hey, we're going to go spend big on some high school recruits, which the whole strategy behind that, I think, is like, hey, it's going to be a little more expensive in the portal. If we go swing and we hit and we believe in James Blanchard, our GM, if we believe in his ability to spot talent here and we hit on these guys coming out of high school, that will actually save a little bit of money and allows us to get in with the hyper elite talent easier than we could if it was going to be in the transfer portal. So that's a piece of the strategy. But I think the other piece of the strategy is we're going to spend our money and we're going to spend it big in the trenches. Like I said, you go back to like David Bailey and that whole crew that's in this transfer portal class, Lee Hunter that they got from UCF, Romello Heights, like all these guys. It's about being good in the trenches, which is where the SEC dominates. You know, not that they don't have great skill players as well, but they have such size and skill on the offensive and defensive lines in the SEC. Like, you think about it, the SEC, first thing that comes to mind when you think SEC football, man, you're thinking about defensive linemen, edges, massive defensive tackles. And so that feels like what Texas Tech is trying to do here. Like, hey, we can go find a Taj Brooks, train him up, coach him up. But what we can't really do is find 3-star guys who are going to have the size and skill set that these SEC bred boys actually have in the trenches. And that feels to me like what the strategy has been here. We'll go get those dudes. There is a quote from James Blanchard from an On3 article that says, quote, "I'm going to do some senior evals. And if somebody is underpaying an elite guy that has senior tape, he might be a 4 or 5-star guy and people are only paying him $100,000 or $200,000. I'm going to give him $300,000 or $400,000 and go steal somebody." Obviously, this amount of money was more, but that's the general strategy, it seems, for Texas Tech here. And to emphasize that point about why you would do this in the trenches and then kind of rely on taking maybe a more typical Big 12 recruit at the skill position and trying to coach that guy up, the SEC has 17 more defensive linemen on NFL rosters than any other conference. That was as of the beginning of 2024. Like, that's where the SEC shines. And if Texas Tech can be that team in the Big 12, or they can then take that roster, go to a playoff game and not be overmatched in the trenches, that's seemingly, I think it would make sense that that's the fastest way to start to try and compete with those schools up there at the top, okay? But there are a couple huge things with this. I think this is like as important as anything happening in arguably the country right now, but certainly in the Big 12, like this story and what's going on with Texas Tech. And you might roll your eyes if you're not a Texas Tech fan, because I get some of that sentiment. Like, being a K-State guy, I hear some of the K-State fan sentiment, like, oh yeah, okay, well, let's wait and watch them go 7-5 again. That'll be great. Heard some of that today when I saw this going around. I understand that sentiment. It is fair. I mean, Tech does need to go actually win to back this up. But man, this is, if Tech proves that you can literally just go buy a roster, then it will be either one of two things are happening here. Buying a roster is more about 2025. Like, that is for sure. Go out, buy in the crazy NIL era a roster and see if it will work. See if that works. That's immensely important if the sport is going to continue down that path. Then Tech will have proven like you can effectively do that and then compete at a national level in the playoff. And that will be massive, because we're all, as Big 12 fans, living in this world of like, how do we compete at the top? We get all this crap that the Big 12 doesn't have enough 5-star players, doesn't have enough NFL players, can't hang with the SEC and the Big 10 bad boys when it matters the most, Georgia, TCU, all of that. If Texas Tech proves that you can just by spending a little bit of extra cash, I mean, that's massive in terms of access for everybody else in college football. So it's important for that. But even beyond that, I think just watching Texas Tech's strategy here, regardless of whether it's going to still be more of a free-for-all or it's going to be, hey, let's see how you actually manage your money. And this will be more about having a great GM and somebody who knows how to spend it in the trenches and go after some elite high school players and try to make it pay off like that instead of paying an extra tax in the portal for guys with a less high upside. Well, then that's paving a really huge path if it works out like that. That is very trend-setting in terms of a blueprint that you might follow in the Big 12 or beyond. I mean, that could be a blueprint that's followed by others as well. If that's the new reality that we're going to be living in, is more of a quote-unquote capped sport, and you got to figure out how to best spend your money. So lots of reasons, lots of significance to look at that. But I think especially here, if we do stay in more of like an uncapped environment and a free and wild NIL environment, this could be the thing that affects real change. This is when I tease that, hey, this could be something that affects rule change. I do seriously wonder if this works and fair market value is not going to have much teeth. Will the SEC be like, hey, let's actually get behind, let's get behind Deloitte. Let's get behind CST. Let's get behind all of it. CST, CSC, whatever the entity is. I'm forgetting it. That's going to enforce this. Let's get behind them and make sure this actually does get enforced so that schools like Tech can't siphon our recruits away and legitimately compete with us at the top of the sport. And the example that I have for this is actually something I just happened to be listening to earlier today. For those of you familiar with Pablo Torre Finds Out, incredible podcast. He's doing like basically long form journalism in the form of podcasts, and it's unbelievably entertaining. NFL storylines are taking up all the headlines from him right now, but there was a great one today from his vault about Oscar Schmidt. Okay, he was a Brazilian basketball player, was the all-time leading scorer in professional basketball history. Never played in the NBA because he turned down an NBA contract. But in 1987, okay, he dropped 46 on the Americans in the gold medal game of the Pan Am Games. And that was when internationally NBA players were not allowed to play. And the U.S. had like a 30-point lead. They blew it. Nobody thought they could ever be beaten. And it sent America into a panic. And then guess what happened? They changed the rule. NBA players could play, and bam, you had the dream team shortly thereafter. Affected a major rule change because somebody who was not supposed to be able to compete at the highest level, somebody who was not supposed to be able to threaten the establishment came in and did. And then you got a major rule change. So if Texas Tech does legitimately do this, and they say go to the playoff, they win a game, they get to where Arizona State did, but they actually follow through and win a game. I guess that's a little bit different here because they'd have to win 2 to get to the semis, but they make some noise. And then they continue to land recruits. And we realize, hey, the money spigot's not going to be shut off, so Tech will be able to just pay whoever they want and continue to land 5 stars. And the momentum picks up because that's another thing here. Momentum will pick up as recruits see this. You know, you were seeing the other Tech kids that have already been committed jumping in on the fun on Twitter. Like, there's a lot of momentum building. This can turn into a real movement. If that starts to happen, the SEC might say, hey, wait. All we're doing by opening this up to pay anybody is, yes, it's exciting. Like, hey, we at Georgia or Alabama could pay anybody anything, and we've definitely got motivated boosters and all this stuff. But what it's actually doing is taking away our biggest advantages, which is if everybody is operating under the same rules and the same amount of money that you can pay. We go back to like 2005 when who was winning all the recruiting battles? Oh, it was us with the tradition and the NFL pedigree that we can sell. When it wasn't about who has more money, it was just about who's got the better coach and the better tradition and who sends more players to the NFL. We'll dominate. If we go back to that, we'll dominate. And so I do truly wonder if that could lead to a different sort of a push from the SEC, maybe the Big Ten, but obviously I think this seems to focus more around the SEC because Tech has invaded their territory more. Some of that's just regionality. They're located closer there, but some of these recruits that they've been pulling, you know, Felix, I'm saying Ojo, Tech fans, correct me if it's Ojo, like if I'm saying it wrong. But I mean, he was thought to be going to Texas, right? Now Guyton, he's thought to be going to Georgia. Like they're pulling kids away from SEC schools. So that's where the real heat is. That's where the real heat is on it right now. So anyway, you can root against Texas Tech if you're a Big 12 fan. I understand Big 12 fans are not going to necessarily be like rooting for Texas Tech to beat their team. But I think regardless of what you feel about it in relation to your team, you should be paying very close attention to it because I think it's the most important thing going on in the Big 12 right now. And one of, if not the most important things in college football. Like, can we actually get an upstart in there by utilizing the system the way that it is right now and using a bunch of cash to try and get in there and bust in on the establishment? It's a huge story. It's a huge, huge story. Man, I mean, I see T-Duck here. I knew this would be a hot one in the comments. T-Duck, legitimately, I'm wondering if T-Duck is just trolling here. I'm going to get into some of the SEC reaction from this, but this is kind of perfect because it fits in exactly with what some of the SEC reaction has been. I mean, if that's a real take, again, I'm going to give benefit of the doubt here and not think that it is. I don't understand what the logic is. Like, everybody can pay recruits, and it's just very much like a spoiled kid reaction to somebody else being able to get the same thing that they did. You know, I mean, that's really what you're seeing, I think, when you break down the psychology of it. So T-Duck, we shall see. That's really just an attitude of like, hey, it's my birthright as an Oregon fan. You know, Oregon is especially hypocritical there because why is Oregon even in the game right now? It's because of Phil Knight. You know, I mean, it's because of Nike money that Oregon's even in this conversation. So, yeah, there's quite a glass house to be chucking that stone through. David, what's up, David? Appreciate you, David. Thank you for being here. David says, don't think Texas Tech will be invited to the SEC with Texas and Texas A&M in the league. Want them to be a Big 12 leader, though. Yeah, I mean, so much of this, I know people want to start that conversation about the SEC, and I talked about it here recently, especially when we saw the Memphis thing with the deal that Memphis was trying to put up to get into the SEC. It's not going to help that there are two schools in the state of Texas already with Texas and Texas A&M. Maybe, then you would start to think, well, maybe the Big Ten. I don't know. It seems like in all this like kind of fanfic realignment world, might be a quicker path. Instead of Tech getting invited to the Big Ten, might be a quicker path to like A&M going to the Big Ten, which always gets mentioned, and then Texas Tech break on through and take their seat at the table in the SEC. Maybe. I don't know. I don't see a super clear path to that. I think for right now, we just see if this experiment works, and if. Look, I understand why Tech would want to be in the SEC or whatever, but if you got all these billionaires, not just Cody Campbell, as I was informed last time, that there are others, and I know there's a ton of money funding what Tech is doing right now. If you got the money and you can just do it from the Big 12, now we're kind of back to the Oklahoma conversation, like where Oklahoma was at before leaving for the SEC. They were sort of just in the catbird seat in the Big 12. They could run their operation every year, win the Big 12, like 7-8 times out of 10, make the playoff. It was pretty easy for them to be in the playoff every single year from where they were at. If that's what Tech can do, it doesn't matter as much. Tech has so much money right now backing it that it gives you much more of like a safeguard from feeling like you're totally left behind, even if you are in the Big 12. So I am with you on that, David. I am with you. Thank you. Thank you for your message, my friend, and your support of the channel. If you want to be like David, click the $ below the chat box. Appreciate everybody who does that. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you would like to leave me a question or comment that way and you're not watching live, I will use it to kick off the next show so you can still be a part of the conversation. And totally free. Just like the video, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. That is ofbnews.com. Okay. Yes. So how are our friends in the SEC taking the news that a Big 12 school has once again upset the apple cart and once again taken away what they think is their birthright, 5-star recruits from the South? Well, they're in complete shambles. And they should be. They should be. But it should not be surprising how the SEC has reacted to all of this. It has been much the same as what I just showed you a minute ago from our friend T-Duck, the Oregon fan in here. T-Duck, Tech buying players is unfair. Similar kind of reaction from SEC country that we saw today and really this week, because it's been a story that's been brewing this week. It got out with Steve Wiltfong earlier in the week that he predicted Texas Tech to land Guyton, the 5-star edge, LaDainian Guyton, number 1 prospect in the 2027 class. So everyone knew this was coming because this is how it's gone, right? It's how it went with Ojo. It's how it's going now with Guyton, and it's what's firing up with 5-star offensive tackle Cooper Hackett, who is another one that looks to be the next that's coming. Like, this is how it works, man. I know you might look at Texas Tech and scoff a little bit, but when Tech starts coming now, you better say goodbye to your recruit because they're landing him. And in this case, the most offended, the most upset are Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, because they were the three that were most in on LaDainian Guyton, especially Georgia. Okay, especially Georgia. And remember, for SEC fans, like, they are really having to get used to this with Tech, not even just because of everything I've talked about with football. Texas Tech dominated the softball portal and like completely threw the axis of power off balance in softball they had it was like 4 of the top 6 in the softball portal at one point there. Texas Tech was going crazy with that. And so you had SEC being a big softball and baseball centric conference. They were not thrilled about that. There was a huge uproar about that. Then Texas Tech lands the number 1 class in the football portal, 1 or 2, depending on where you're looking. And SEC fans are looking around like, what the hell is this? How is Texas Tech doing this? Then they take a 5-star offensive tackle away from Texas. Now they're taking a 5-star edge, the number 1 player in 27, away from Georgia. And lots of SEC fans are not happy about it. Here's one. This is even an example of the great SEC camaraderie that we see out there. LSU, an LSU fan, taking major offense at what it is that Texas Tech is doing, okay? Here's what your LSU fan has to say, according to message board geniuses. Thank you for this. Guyton heading to Texas Tech today is a breaking point in recruiting. We have hit a breaking point in recruiting, people. Number 1 overall prospect in Georgia. No number 1 overall prospect in Georgia ever dreams of going to play in Lubbock, Texas, and Tech. Not that it hasn't already been, but this is out of hand. I mean, isn't it funny when it's just the traditional powers don't win every single last thing. So this is out of hand. It's such a funny attitude that our friends in the SEC have about all this. If it's not me, if it's not us, or any of the like 4 or 5 outside of us that generally can compete, well, then it's simply not fair. If it's not rigged toward us, then this thing isn't fair. I mean, it seems like we have a lot of that sort of attitude these days, and it has very much permeated the SEC, which is crazy. Also, interesting to take the shot at Lubbock there, which is very predictable. But I looked this up, people. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, not exactly like a hotbed of where kids want to go. Like, it's not Austin, Texas. All right. Like, acting like Baton Rouge, Louisiana, if not for the history of LSU football, would be some place that kids would like dream of being. Baton Rouge, Louisiana is actually 50,000 people smaller than Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock, Texas has 50,000 plus more in its population than Baton Rouge. Okay. How about that? And yeah, this is where that type of attitude that you're seeing there is, I'll revert back to, does this lead to the SEC being like, hey, maybe fair market value is a great thing, and we want everybody to be working on basically the same type of cap here. Maybe it's, let's make them employees, let's collectively bargain, and let's get a salary cap so that we can retain all the advantages again, because they'll want to come play for us because of tradition and the NFL pipeline and all of that, and we can take away money being a great equalizer. All very much the spoiled rich kid attitude at the end of the day, man. Spoiled rich kid thinks he should get everything. No kid should have anything else. He is forced to share one of his many toys, and he throws a fit because he's not used to that. Nobody's ever told him that before. That's not what's happened. Now, I'm not a parent, but I'm sure there are a lot of parents who can relate to seeing that happen with, I mean, hopefully not your kid, but friends' kids or other people's kids that you encounter. The spoiled rich kid had to share a toy for once and does not like it at all. Does not like it at all. If you want to see the reaction of actual Georgia fans, here's an actual Georgia fan for you. Once again, thank you to message board geniuses for helping us out with this one. Just my screen here for you. This one from Dog628. This is something that really pisses me off about the sport. This kid hasn't even played his junior year of high school yet, but he is about to make millions of dollars without even giving a look to other programs. Well, that doesn't seem fair. It feels like he's given a look to other programs, but I can fathom losing recruits to Bama, Texas, etc. But Texas Tech simply has a blank checkbook where they will spend and spend and spend. No kid from Savannah, Georgia ever dreams of going to Texas Tech. Sport is ruined. Sport is ruined. Boy, somebody a little salty that Georgia didn't even get to the national championship game this past year. Been a rough couple of years for the Dogs ever since that game against TCU, and now losing recruits to Texas Tech. Boy, the sport is ruined. This sport, college football, that we love for the zaniness and the fact that there is this environment of like, hey, anybody, any given Saturday can generally beat somebody. That's why we love the sport. But it's completely ruined because Texas Tech can land some 5-star recruits by paying players. I'm not even going down the road of like, how long have SEC schools been paying players under the table? But man, in a game that has been rigged, it's like playing the house. Like if you've been in any league other than the SEC for the last 20 years, it's kind of like going to the casino. Like you're playing against the house. They've got an edge. Everything is tilted in their advantage. You're going to wind up over time basically losing because things are tilted in their advantage. And you take back one little percentage point or 2 percentage points of that edge with what Texas has been doing by landing a 5-star edge. Didn't even plan that. And they throw a fit. They throw a fit. It's quite entertaining to watch. It is quite entertaining to watch. And it is interesting that it's like the goalposts that move from SEC country here too, right? Because you see a lot of people talking down to the Big 12 from SEC country saying like, well, come on. Like you don't have the blue chip recruits or the NFL players to compete with us. And that's why your league is inferior. And so then Texas Tech is like, all right, bet. We'll go get some 5-star players. We'll go get some guys headed to the NFL. And they go do that by playing within the rules, doing it perfectly legally. And then the SEC reaction is like, whoa. Well, not like that. We didn't mean do that. We didn't mean take players from us. When we taunted you and said you don't have any good players, and then you went and took players from us. That's not how this works. You can't do that. Look, this is a great like David Goliath moment, like underdog story here. And I know, look, Big 12 fans, I know. Tech fans are a very proud fan base. Can it be a little annoying sometimes on Twitter with the attitudes there for a program that has not won more than 9 games since Mike Leach was there in 2009 and Barack Obama had just taken office? Yes, it can. But when you really take a step back to think about it, this is a great kind of underdog story here and what is happening. And if you're a Big 12 fan, your school is very much more in the mold of Texas Tech than it is Georgia. So I don't know, man. Pull up a seat, enjoy it. Pull up the popcorn, pull out the popcorn, and enjoy it. That would be my advice to you, and it is certainly my reaction to this. Okay, we've got a couple other super chats here. Kim, one of our resident Texas Tech fans, appreciate you being here, Kim. Kim says, okay, let's all take a breath. Nobody is a bigger Tech homer than me, but we need to win a title instead of just going to another Big 12 leading 43rd bowl game, right, Kat? Well, yes, that, and I did, Kim. I slipped that in at one point. I said, hey, like Tech does need to back this up and win for sure. But really, like, if we're talking about winning a Big 12 title, somebody does that every single year, and it doesn't get the SEC's attention like this. It doesn't create a stir and create a story in college football like this. So what Tech has done, regardless of what happens on the field this year, has been in a lot of ways more significant than anybody who has won a Big 12 title for a very long time, just by nature of the dynamics of the sport right now and like what this can mean big picture wise. But yes, does it fall much more hollow and on deaf ears and not become as big of a story if Tech doesn't back it up and win this year? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. I mean, there's a ton. I love Joey McGuire. I'm sure it's really exciting right now to be the head coach at Texas Tech, but there is a lot of pressure. I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure on that dude to deliver this year, not just for his own job security and his own fan base, but like I said, you're kind of looking at Big 12, big chunk of the ACC, any school that is not one of the, really any school that's not one of the top like 4 or 5 in the SEC or the Big 10, you're kind of looking at it like, hey guys, like go do it. Prove that we can. Prove that schools of our caliber can do this. Wyatt, thank you, by the way, Kim. Appreciate you. Wyatt says, I just want the Dust Bowl to be a protected rivalry before they go to the SEC, or even a pod with Texas Tech, TCU, and Baylor. Wyatt, convinced that they're headed to the SEC. First of all, I would disagree with that, but I understand why people are like leery of that. I think if your fear is that Texas Tech leaves, I think the much more likely path than, hey, they go to the SEC is, well, they just say screw it and create a super league in 2030, 2031, 2032, somewhere around there. And Texas Tech makes the cut, and most, if not all, Big 12 schools in the rest of the conference don't. Like, I think that would be the fear as opposed to Tech getting an SEC invite at some point. A lot of the SEC smoke right now is around pumping up the basketball product. Obviously, North Carolina is a big part of that. But even beyond that, the other stuff that's being talked about there, seems like they're pretty concerned about that basketball product. Now, I understand. You come back and say, well, Tech has pretty good hoops. I get it, but one basketball brand that no matter how much winning Texas Tech does, they're not going to be able to match up with there. So anyway, just my thought, but I appreciate it, Wyatt. I understand that my spiel on the protected rivalries thing is, one, I think the Big 12 is well aware of how upset people have been by it. I think I can tell you that pretty assuredly. Maybe there could be some tweaks to it. I certainly wouldn't want to make any promises on that. But also, you do have to remember, in a massive conference, and this is partially the Big 12's fault, like partially not, because they're just doing what they have to in this day and age. But when you have a conference that big, it's hard to schedule. Like, it's hard to make a schedule, and it's hard to make everybody happy and keep all of those rivalries and make it all work. So it's not as easy as I think people make it out to be. That is always my other spiel on it. But I do understand the frustration. So, Wyatt, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of the channel, my friend. Okay, guys, I got to do something new here before we get to the back half of the show. I've got to say hello to my friends at SeatGeek. So I will be back in just a second. Football season is here, guys, and that means we all need to find good deals on tickets, all right? And the best place to do that is SeatGeek. I have to give a huge shout out to SeatGeek, the sponsor of today's video. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are over 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek. So obviously college football is covered, but if you're a music guy like me, it's perfect for concerts. I'm buying a ton of concert tickets this fall. And I tell you what, I have my eye on those Holy War tickets for BYU and Utah coming up as well. And man, all you got to do is open up the app. It's perfect. You can go check what's going on here, find the green dots in the seat. That means they're good deals. Red dots, maybe not so much, but SeatGeek will help you find the best deals on seats depending on where it is that you are trying to sit. They're each rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And you guys know I'm here for you. I've got a code for you. Code Kurtz gets you $20 off your tickets. Again, that's code Kurtz for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. $20 off your first purchase with promo code Kurtz. Make sure you just click the link in the description to download the app and have that code on hand and ready to go. Guys, I'm here to help you out. I've got your back. Hit up my friends at SeatGeek. All right, there you go. You heard the man. That man being me. Okay, please like the video. Subscribe to the channel, everybody in here. Appreciate you guys for being here. Subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com. That is ofbnews.com. And we're gonna talk a little hoops here. Also, I should mention John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo, and click the $ below the chat box to submit a super chat if you want to guarantee that your question or comment makes it here on the show tonight. But I'm here to tell you, the Big 12 likely made a lot of money this week, and it's a story that's being underreported in large part because of what's happening with Texas Tech, but also it's not an immediate payoff with the money. Okay, so let me explain here. We've long talked on the channel about how Brett Yormark wants to decouple basketball rights, right? He wants to split up the Big 12's TV deal next time around. In an ideal world, you've got one deal for football, one deal for basketball. It's a way to maximize value for basketball, potentially make more money by splintering those off. That's the general idea. And I think Brett Yormark may wind up being a trendsetter on that. A lot of ideas that you see start in the Big 12. I mean, the Big 12 is the first to be reported looking at private equity. Then you start seeing the Big 10 is, and the SEC is talking to Goldman Sachs. And a lot of times when Brett Yormark comes up with a good idea, others are going to steal it. This may be another one of those. And keep an eye on the Big 10 deal, by the way, which will come up a year before the Big 12's. Will they try to do something with their basketball package, specifically there, a la decoupling in the Big 12? Also, as I mentioned just a second ago, keep your eye on the next realignment move for the SEC. Like, they're looking around like, hey, we've now got a great basketball league. Maybe Brett Yormark knows what he's talking about with trying to emphasize basketball as much as possible. So keep your eye on what the SEC may do there beyond just North Carolina. And if you're piecing everything together, if you've been watching Brett Yormark's moves and keeping track of that pretty closely, you are pretty well aware that, like, there have been many moves over the last couple of years where he's clearly been angling toward beefing up the basketball product. So you'd be looking at this saying, all right, everybody says he ideally would really like to decouple football and basketball rights, use that as a tactic to make more money. Well, of course, then he's going to be pushing hard for a school like Gonzaga, which happened for a little while. Didn't work out, but definitely happened for a little while. Didn't land Gonzaga. Then pushed hard for UConn. And that was, I remember almost a year ago to this day, because my birthday is coming up, and it was on my birthday last year when the UConn story broke again, that Brett Yormark was really pushing for trying to add UConn to the Big 12. He has been trying to open up hoops as much as he possibly can. But it's not just adding new teams. If you want to beef up what your next TV deal may look like in basketball, obviously getting better as a conference is a part of it, but you can be savvy in the way you attack the TV deal. It doesn't even have to be all on the court. You can utilize your personal skill set, which I think Yormark has proven to be excellent at this, as evidenced by Exhibit A, which is jumping the line, getting in front of the Pac-12 on that last football basketball TV deal that effectively killed the Pac-12, eventually led to the Four Corners coming here. That was a home run for Brett Yormark. That was expert level work from him to understand the moment and then to have the negotiating ability to go make it happen. I trust Brett Yormark a lot when it comes to TV deals, and I think he continues to show a really excellent expertise and an excellent touch when it comes to how exactly to maneuver this. All right. So how do you maximize the money when you are trying to sell something? You do it with multiple bidders, right? You need people bidding against each other. You need multiple suitors out there to try and get the absolute best deal. When homes were selling like crazy a couple of years ago, depending on where you're at, may have slowed down a little bit now, but pandemic and just out of the pandemic, when homes are going like crazy, you're hearing about homes going, 40K, 50K, 100K over asking, depending on what price range you're in. They're all going way over because you had so many bidders. Like there were multiple bidders there. Everybody's driving the price up. Pretty simple supply and demand. Well, if you've got multiple bidders going after the basketball TV rights, better chance that your deal is going to wind up being worth more money. And so now what Brett Yormark has, I think, very expertly done is over the last, it was about a year ago that we heard the news about the CBS deal where CBS was taking some of the basketball inventory. This year, not only did you see games on CBS, but CBS Sports Network. Now we get NBC. And that was the headline this week, was that the Big 12 will now have 20 men's basketball games on Peacock this season. That gets NBC involved. And I know when people hear that, when the average Big 12 fan hears that, you're going to be like, well, that sucks, John. I don't want to have to buy another streaming service to watch Big 12 basketball. I'm already having to really dig deep to have ESPN Plus and watch a bunch of Big 12 hoops there. You just said CBS Sports Network. CBS Sports Network is not something if you have YouTube TV like I do, not a sponsor could be, I would definitely recommend. You did get CBS Sports Network, but if you don't, that could be another thing that you're having to reach for. And it's like, man, how many things am I going to have to buy just to watch Big 12 basketball? I get it. Okay. Believe me, I do get it. But I think short-term sacrifice for something that's going to be much better long-term, because now Brett Yormark has effectively engaged Fox, ESPN, NBC, CBS, and Turner, like TNT. They're all going to be airing Big 12 basketball games. Like they all have Big 12 inventory. That is excellent news. That is excellent news. That is how you strike up a bidding war or just get as many possible entities involved in trying to sell your basketball product. Because not only is it just getting their feet wet, it's like introducing them to Big 12 basketball. They'll get to see it. They'll get to go to different arenas. They'll get to see how passionate the fans are, how great of a product it can be in the Big 12. But you're also just starting a working relationship with them. Like if you were going to try and just pitch the league in a couple of years when you're looking at decoupling, you'd be starting from much more like ground zero with that relationship than you would be if you're already having a working relationship here with getting your basketball product out across these networks. So I think it's the way you need to do it. I think if your problem is, and I'm seeing some of the comments from everybody in the chat, like I get it. If your frustration is with, hey, I don't want Peacock, I don't want to do another streaming service. Like your frustration is just, like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Brett Yormark here is the player. He is not the game. The game is, this is where everybody went. and where the industry went when everyone cut the cable, like 10, 15 years ago, however the hell long that's been. This is where it went. We have a splintered media environment with that now, and everybody, this is like a symptom of the problem. Brett Yormark is not the problem there. He's doing the absolute best business move, making the absolute best business move that he can under the current environment. I would also just point out that I know it's like, no Peacock, I don't want Peacock. The games on Peacock should look a lot better. There's a lot of complaining about ESPN Plus, sometimes rightfully so. And a part of that is like every game is basically being produced on site by the school that they're at. So there's not this like uniform standard of quality that you will get on Peacock because NBC is producing every game. So I do just want to mention that if you're somebody who has complained about ESPN Plus, Peacock will probably be a much better viewing experience for you. Okay. I'm seeing, so Bracket Cat says it's also a brilliant way to see which networks actually do the best job of presenting games and promoting the Big 12, hint, not ESPN. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting too. Just now realizing I forgot to put there we go. That is interesting too. I think that's a good comment. I appreciate that. You hope that you have that kind of choice there. Like maybe you'll have multiple suitors and you can pick the one that you think would be the best partner in terms of what they present. Frankly, I just don't know that ESPN does a great job of presenting much of anything these days because I'm very scared about this NFL deal and the fact that Red Zone might be there. Even though we may get college football Red Zone, I don't trust ESPN really with either one of those to not screw it up and make it worse and throwing like Stephen A or Pat McAfee at it. I digress. So maybe it does turn into an NBC or a CBS or Turner. But I just look at this like pretty low risk, pretty low cost, other than some annoyance from the fans, which again, I knew that I would see some here. Pretty low risk, pretty low cost, and a high reward. Opening up some business relationships with other networks, which can lead to more money in the future, and allowing them to see up close and personal what a good product you have with Big 12 basketball. So I know nobody wants to hear, especially how expensive everything is getting these days. Like, short-term pain here with having to buy Peacock for some long-term gain. But I do think it's the move Brett Yormark had to make if he was going to be the most shrewd businessman that he possibly can be here. And that's what you want, man. That is what you want. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. Everybody here, appreciate you all. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you're not watching live, you want to be a part of the conversation, I will kick off the next show with your question or comment if you do that. It's been a lively one here tonight. Click the $sign below the chat box if you would like to submit your question or comment. Guarantee that you make it on the show tonight. Okay, so last thing that I have for you comes from ESPN. You don't need to take my word for it, but ESPN has now told us who the most important player in the Big 12 is. And look, I think it'll be polarizing. I think a bunch of you will wholeheartedly disagree on this one. All right. And in fact, I disagree on this one based on the fact that I already did a video about the most important player in the Big 12. And the guy that I picked didn't even make the list here. All right. So let me set the stage for you. Bill Connolly at ESPN, if you're not familiar, he's more of a numbers guy. I really respect his work. I think he does a very good job. He's got the S&P Plus, which has become a very popular model. A lot of these guys have their own models, statistical models in college football. He's got a great Big 12 preview up. I guess, especially if you're a K-State fan, it was very high on K-State. But he's a big numbers guy. And he released an article this week that seemingly a little less rooted specifically in numbers, because the list was just, hey, here are the 40 most important players in college football. There's a ton of quarterbacks, especially in the Big 12, as you might imagine. I mean, I think the Big 12 is the best quarterback league in the country. I don't know that anybody is really fighting that. So you're going to get a lot of quarterbacks in the Big 12. Before we get to most important player of the Big 12, if you really want to be mad here, and I know I said I just respect Bill Connolly's work, but he's talking about the treatment. He does work for ESPN. Who just said ESPN? It was Bracket Cat, right? Just said ESPN is not going to be the best promotion for your conference. Well, 32 players went before we got to the Big 12. Maybe it was at 32. I think the number one player in the Big 12 was at 32. So there were 31 players before we got to a Big 12 player. Big 12's most important player is 32nd most important in the country. Send your angry emails and tweets accordingly. Sorry, Bill. Then the Big 12 gets its own category. Some of this is kind of the way he divided it. He was doing these as specific categories, but the Big 12 got its own category. All right, who's the most important player in the Big 12? Well, 3 of the quarterbacks that were mentioned were Josh Hoover, Sam Leavitt, and Sawyer Robertson, and I think everybody understands why they are very important. I think most would list them on a top 5, maybe 6, 7. I think they should make anybody's top 5 in terms of most important players in the Big 12. But it was not my most important player, and it was not the one Bill Connolly selected either. Okay, so Bill Connolly picked Avery Johnson, K-State quarterback Avery Johnson, as the most important player in the Big 12. I feel like this is a polarizing one, and I'm just judging this. I know that it's dangerous to do that, but I'm judging this based on social media reaction that I've seen. It does feel like there is a growing sentiment from some Big 12 fans out there like, hey, man, when we talk about quarterbacks that can really sling it and play, like obviously I saw Sam Leavitt do it last year to Texas in the college football playoff. And even if you're going to say that was mostly Cam Scadaboo, I mean, I saw him do it to get to the Big 12 championship game, win a Big 12 championship, dominate that game. Like, I saw that guy do it at a high level. Sawyer Robertson was playing with his hair on fire last year, had a statistically dominant season. So did Josh Hoover. Like, I've seen that guy sling it all over the yard. Avery Johnson was very inconsistent. I have seen some that think Avery Johnson is quite overrated just because the hype has not yet matched the production. Now, my 2 comments on that would be, 1, I mean, it's fair to a degree, for sure. He has gotten a bunch of hype because of his recruiting pedigree, because of how tantalizing the talent is. Like, you can just see the level of athlete he is, and you think, wow, there is a world of potential with that. But he needs to be way more consistent. I mean, no doubt. Ask any K-State fan, dude. You're going to get that sort of response. It was a very frustrating year last year, starting 7-1, finishing 8-4, losing the game at Houston. I mean, the last month of the season, Avery Johnson was not very good. I think a little bit banged up, but not very good, especially throwing the ball. And he's going to have to take major strides there if he will even approach being the most important player in the conference, for sure. And so I would agree that, like, those guys are much more proven. They're definitely better passers of the football. But this is all about potential. And K-State, I think, has a ton of variance in terms of ceiling to floor this year and what the team could be. And so much of that is going to ride on what Avery Johnson is. So much of that is going to ride on whether or not he takes big steps and he becomes the type of player that everybody sees with the potential. So it can get annoying hearing that P word, potential, but that's definitely what it's about, folks. It's about potential here. And so the comment that stuck with me from Bill Connolly's write-up was that he said K-State has a ceiling higher than 10 wins if Avery Johnson really is as good as he can be this year. So I think that's kind of his idea there. When he talks about most important players in the league, if you think K-State has like a 6-6 floor and like an 11-1 ceiling, which I think is fair to say, then Avery Johnson becomes a really important player because there's such a wide variance in the outcome. Now, if you ask me, who's your most important player in the Big 12, John? This is a very appropriate one to tie it all in with today, what we opened the show talking about. I think the most important player in the Big 12 is Behren Morton, because Texas Tech is going to have so much talent around him. And I still have my doubts about him being an upper echelon Big 12 quarterback and being good enough to tie that all together to be, and we're talking here, I'm not talking about, Tech maybe being like 9-3. I'm talking about Tech being like a 10 or 11 win team, winning the Big 12, going to the playoff, really making some noise, upsetting the apple cart, getting the SEC more shook than they already are now, watching all of Texas Tech's recruiting wins. And because like that potential is there, if Texas Tech does deliver on all the promise of this year, that's why I would argue if we're talking about like ceilings, that's a huge ceiling, not just for Tech, but for the conference. I don't think K-State's season will have as much bearing on the conference unless you want to say, hey, Avery Johnson's good enough that they could go out and win a playoff game or two, and that would really help the league. All right. I think Tech has a better shot at doing that just because of the sheer talent on their roster. I don't think Tech necessarily has a better shot of fulfilling their full potential, but I think if they got there, they'd be a little bit more well-suited because of how big and physical they are up front. So because of that, like Baron Morton would be number one on my list. He just made the others category for Bill Connolly. So he was at least in there, but he was not one of the guys that made the official list of the top 40 most important. Look, I can listen to arguments for any of those guys. I mean, Baylor, I have said, is arguably the most important team in the Big 12 because of that schedule that they have with Auburn and SMU in the non-con. If they win those two games, that would be a huge lift for the Big 12, particularly the Auburn game. So if you want to say that, fair enough. I will listen to that argument. I would still say that Tech's potential when you get to the playoff, when it matters more than it should in the sport in terms of the perception and how people look at the league, I think that is still higher there. Josh Hoover, kind of the same deal. He'll get a crack at SMU too. They've got a tough schedule, but look, if TCU made a championship game in 2022, it was not that long ago. I can listen to that argument. I just think it's when we talk about variance in terms of one team's success and variance in terms of what could change for the league at large as a result of one team's season, Baron Morton and Avery Johnson are a little bit higher up the list for me. As I think through all these devil's advocate scenarios, like if you want to say, hey, I think Sawyer Robertson's the best shot of any of those guys to win the Heisman. Hey, I will listen to that. And that can then be very significant to the Big 12. I would still slightly disagree. Even if that were the case, I would still slightly disagree with how important that could be to the conference relative to Baron Morton, but I get it. I get the point. That you're making. Okay, let's get to some super chats before I get out of here. We've got a couple left. Bronco says the Utah Lobos QB sucks. All right, BYU fan, I'm guessing there, not a Devin Dampier fan. Devin Dampier did not get a mention there. You could look, I'll listen to, if you want to say Devin Dampier, most important, Utah could turn this thing right around. Devin Dampier, I think, will play a massive role. We've seen how much of an impact does quarterback health and like quarterback play in general have on Utah seasons. We've seen it play out in the last 4 years. They're either a 500 to below 500 team or they're going to the Rose Bowl based on what they get at quarterback. Starter 179. How does he look in camp? Starter 179. If you're still in the chat, let me know when this was. I guess that was probably Avery. I'm sure that was Avery now that I think about it. Yeah, I mean, look, I've heard good things about Avery Johnson, but the thing is, this is the time of year where when do you hear bad things? Very rarely do you hear bad things about how a player is performing in camp. You might hear bad things about injuries, like guys being hurt, which K-State has definitely dealt with some of that, some health situations. But you don't really hear someone saying like, man, yeah, I don't know, dude, QB1 just not playing very well in practice. So I'm just saying that while I've heard very good things and everybody says all the right things about him for sure, it's hard to put too much stock into that with anybody. And that's not just an Avery Johnson specific thing. I would say that for anybody. I mean, I can tell you that Chris Kleiman says Avery Johnson is faster this year. He was one of 4 players on the team that broke 23 miles an hour, which is great. That's very encouraging. I can tell you Avery Johnson has talked about he put too much pressure on himself last year to try and be a straight up pocket passer, that he like really wanted to prove that. And he probably should try to use his legs a little bit more, which I think most K-State fans would agree with. So there's a couple nuggets on Avery Johnson, but I appreciate you, Starter 179. Thank you for being here. Akadon, Morton at Tech has to be most important because of portal spend, expectations, and past injuries. Past injuries definitely factor into that too. Yeah, when you're talking about just like what can happen to Tech's season based on his health or not, that's obviously played a major role in the story of his career so far. And you hate to it's not like he can control a ton of that, but I think, like it or not, that is definitely a piece of the story. So yeah, I'm glad that you agree with me on that. I'm with you. The portal spend, like the investment that has been made in Texas Tech football, and you play the most important position at Texas Tech. And here's another angle on it, Akadon, as I'm thinking about it. Texas Tech, with that level of money, like they could have gone out and tried to spend big in the portal for a different quarterback. If Joey McGuire and James Blanchard felt like, hey, we need to upgrade at quarterback, they could have absolutely gone out and spent that money to do it. They spent that money plenty of other places. But they deemed, hey, Baron Morton's our guy. He's good enough. So we're not going to go spend that money to get like Nico Iamaleava or somebody like that. That's a lot of trust that they've put in him based on that. And that puts some extra importance on your shoulders too. So just a thought there, but appreciate it. I am with you on that. Thank you for your support of the channel. Kim, what's up, Kim? Kim says Barron started all 12 games last year and is 14-4 as a starter. Not sure what more he can do. I just think, and statistically, Baron Morton's, like, his numbers look very good from last year. In fact, I will bring them up. So I have corrected my 3-maw co-hosts before about Baron Morton's season last year. Statistically, 3,335 yards, 27 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Pretty good numbers last year for Baron Morton. Look at his QB rating. So yeah, it was up at 139, up from 123 and then 118. But yeah, you start looking at the stats from the previous 2 years, it's just clear how much injuries played an issue there. He had 1,700, then 1,100 yards passing. Was obviously spending a lot of time being hurt. I just think, like, in big games, big spots, I haven't seen Baron Morton step up to, like, go win a huge game. You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of grinding it out against Iowa State. Lose the Colorado game, score 27 points. That TCU game, TCU he got knocked out of, right? So that's another place where health plays a role. The defense was giving up 59 against Baylor. A lot of injuries against Wazoo. Like, okay, like I can see how you would say maybe that's not totally fair for him. I just have not seen, I don't see the arm talent at the same level as like a Josh Hoover. I don't see just the overall playmaking ability of a Sawyer Robertson. I don't see the overall playmaking potential of an Avery Johnson. I just don't think he's at that level, and maybe he doesn't have to be with how much talent is around him. That's what we're going to find out. And either way, I would still say most important in the Big 12, even if the bar is a little bit lower because of what's around him, then you definitely better meet that mark. So that's just my thought, Kim. I don't feel like he is as dynamic. Okay. Well, I think that's it. Couple of reminders. Please subscribe for the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com. Jeremy, I'm sorry. I got to do it to you, man. It's fair. It's fair to criticize Avery Johnson, the hype around Avery Johnson specifically. He was just a first-year starter last year and put up, he had the touchdown pass record at K-State last season. But for a Texas Tech fan, I'm assuming you're a Tech fan because I saw Tech's offense was great, the defense that cost us games. It's hard for me to hear from a Texas Tech fan that Avery Johnson sucks because Avery Johnson single-handedly beat Texas Tech. Really the first time that we saw him play. So I'm just throwing that out there. 5 touchdowns, man. 5 touchdowns. OFBnews.com to subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Let's see. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you are so inclined to leave a question or comment there, you can do that, and I will kick off the next show with it. So appreciate everybody who does that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bearing with me on the new advertisement today. A lot of fun, exciting things happening as we move toward football season. Just hit 5,000 subscribers on Open for Business. There's a lot of good stuff happening. All right. So thank you for supporting me, and enjoy the rest of your week. I will talk to you all very soon.